My name is Dan Dorval, and I'm President and CEO of Dorval and Cherney Financial Advisors. I am an independent certified financial planner and author of my book, Financial Success for the Rest of Us, Reality Based Financial Planning for Mainstream America.
Hi, my name is Leah Woodley. I'm an associate financial advisor with Dorval and Cherney Financial Advisors. Our conversations discuss what it means to do quality of life planning in all areas of your life. Well, Dan, we're approaching the end of the year, and everyone approaches the end of the year differently. I know for me, I do like to reflect on what went well for the year, what goals I have for the next year. And that's not always the case for everyone. How do you approach the end of the year?
Yeah, I think you and I have talked about we're a little different in how we think about the end of the year, how we think about being goal oriented or being intentional with our activities. I am not a person who is very big on necessarily reflecting over the last year, thinking about what my goals are for the upcoming year. I am not a person who generally makes New Year's resolutions, but I realize a lot of our viewers are. So for me personally, I tend to try to just be consistent in my actions throughout the year. I'm old enough now, I've kind of been through the ringer as far as understanding which things consistently improve my quality of life. And what I have found personally is I don't get motivated by setting a goal.
Mhm,
I need consistency, basically habits.
mhm.
And if I have a habit, it just happens all the time. And then I tend to feel better, whether that's with my health, whether that's family, friends, whatever. So I am much more of a habit based person rather than set a goal, now break it down into digestible parts, and then work my way towards accomplishing the goal.
It seems like establishing habits is a lot simpler than setting goals and and breaking them down into pieces. I think sometimes we can overthink things when it's just like just do it just do what you need to do. So I think that is a good approach. I do think that writing things down does help me. I know there were one of my focuses for this year was just to make sure I'm doing things that bring me quality of life. And so when there were down times and I'm like, well, what should I do? I went back to that list and referenced it and was like, oh, you decided you wanted to plant this, you wanted to make bread. So those were things I was able to revisit throughout the year and actually do those things. So
Now, we talk a lot about the differences between men and women. And
yes.
I'm wondering if you think this is also, maybe this is with you and your spouse, I don't know. But is this something where maybe you view it different than I do in part because of the whole man woman thing?
I don't know. It may be because honestly, I don't know of any men who just sit there and write down their goals and are looking forward to the end of the year because it's approaching the beginning of a new year. I don't know any men like that. So perhaps that is a thing. I haven't thought about it from that perspective.
Well, everything I see is women tend to be much more like intentional about, so they might do journaling, for example. I don't know any men that journal. Now, I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure they exist, but I don't know any men that journal. And yet I
Mhm.
know a lot of women that find great value in journaling and reflecting and thinking about what they want to do. So, I wonder, finances are very distinctly different between men and women, and I'm kind of wondering if this is another one of those topics where it tends to work that way.
It may be. I think men are goal oriented when it comes to perhaps business or things that are going to impact money and things like that. I think sometimes men are more driven with that. And I think women are more touchy feely and trying to set goals for just their lives and the kids and things that they want to do with their friends and things like that. So I think that that may come into play there. I know I was speaking with someone yesterday and he was going away to set goals for his business. He's a realtor and he was going away to set goals for his business. But I think on the personal side, I think that's where women are more into that.
Well, even with our business goals, I tend to not be motivated at all by the classic revenue, profit, bring in this much more assets, which is what advisors tend to talk about all the time. All we do, and I say we because Ellen and I, we work primarily as a team. You're part of our team. When we talk about it, we just focus on actions. Like,
Mhm.
if we help as many people as possible year in, year out and deliver an enormous amount of value, everything else just takes care of itself. There is revenue,
Mhm.
there is profit, there are all these things. And certainly we consider our processes, we do reflect on something not working very well. What could
Mhm.
we do to improve that? But then once we do that, it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
And what I've found is if I don't do something all the time, I don't do it at all.
Mm.
So working out or whatever else, I am a person who can't do the whole like 4 days a week. You'll hear people talk about it, exercise 4 days a week. And I'm like, well, if I exercise 4 days a week, that means there are 3 days I don't have to exercise. And every day becomes a day where I'd prefer not to exercise. So
Yeah.
those 3 days tend to become 4 and 5 and 6. If I do it every day, I don't
Mhm.
have an excuse. Now, it might be different types of activities, but I don't have an excuse to push it off to the next day. So for me personally, that's how I end up doing things, which doesn't relate well to that end of year goal setting type of approach.
Yeah. I think it's probably good to have a balance. I think now that I'm hearing your perspective, I think it would be good to decide on some habits that I want to enforce and implement into my life. But I do think that my goal list was helpful for me this year as far as things that I wanted to do personally. So I think I'll be approaching next year doing both.
Well, if you think about what people do a lot of, is they go, I'm going to eat better.
Hmm.
Okay, you're going to eat better. So then you read something online or you watch a video or you see something and maybe it talks about, hey, here are 10 superfoods that you could incorporate into your diet and it will do these things for you. So then they go out and they buy blueberries and they eat some walnuts and they do whatever and they have these superfoods. And of course, it lasts for a day or
Hmm.
maybe a few days and they feel like they did something. But of
Hmm.
course, we all know that if you just eat superfoods for 3 days, it might make you
Hmm.
feel a little bit better, but it's not going to have any meaningful impact on your quality of life going forward. It really needs to somehow, some way become a habit so that
Yeah.
it's impacting your life long term. And so that's a lot of my health issues that I have with an inflammatory condition and wanting to eat better or stretch or exercise or strengthen certain parts of my body. If I do that, I have to do it consistently and then you see the results. But those results are over the course of, months or years rather than days or even weeks.
Yeah. I've definitely reframed my mindset from having resolutions. I think that I don't look at goals and resolutions as the same thing. And I think the things that I wrote down were things that I knew I could follow through on and I knew that I would do. So I think one important aspect to having goals like I do is to revisit them because if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So I think it's good to look back at it. But like you are saying with the habits, if it's something you're doing every day, it just becomes your way of life. And so it's not something that you need to go re-reference or go look back at again. It's something you're just doing. So I think that is a good approach.
Well, one of the challenges too, at least for me, is, life is busy and it's busy
Mhm.
for most people. And when I think of something that I think, oh, well, that would be a good thing, or that's a goal that I would like to have, if I don't specifically do something with it almost immediately, it just goes away. I mean,
Mhm.
I forgot about it maybe later that day for all I know. I mean, it just goes away. And we do this a lot. We'll see this in our business where something that's not maybe an immediate priority, we identify it as something that could be useful or valuable, but we don't think about it that day or that week because we've got other things going on. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, a month later, maybe a year later, we look at it and we say, oh, yeah, yeah, I remember us
Mhm.
talking about that,
Yeah.
but nothing ever happened. And that's usually
Mhm.
because it just wasn't your main priority at that
Mhm.
point in time. We do see that a lot. And that's where that reflection, if you wrote that down,
Mhm.
a lot of times you'll come back to it later and go,
Mhm.
yeah, at the time, it just wasn't an important enough thing, but now it is.
Right.
And that is one of the biggest advantages, I think, to writing down even a financial plan. You know,
Yeah.
if somebody writes down their plan, they can refer back to it. But
Mhm.
our focus on planning tends to be much more action based in
Mhm.
general. Do this, do this, do this, do this. And if you do the things, the outcomes take care of themselves. Where so many people get caught up in the outcome,
Mhm.
but the outcome doesn't happen in a day or a week or a month.
Mhm.
So it's the actions that get you there. And yet, at the same time, if you don't have the goal written down, it's really hard to direct the actions.
Right. And I think it's a good thing that we ask our clients to write down the actions in the meeting because I know they're getting a lot of information. They do have a certain goal and maybe, oh, I want to retire in a couple years. Maybe I want to pay off this debt. They come in with their goal and we're able to give them the actions and then we have them write that down. I think it's good that they write it down. One, I've read studies where they're like, you writing it down kind of cements it into your mind. So that is beneficial there. And then also they have something to go back to and reference, like, what did Dan say? And they can just pull out their notes and reference that and take action on the items that we've identified for them.
Well, in many cases, we tell them in the meeting, you write it down
Hmm.
because just the act of you physically writing it down, it impacts your internalization of that action. Where, a lot of clients just say, well, can't you send me a summary of this? Which, of
Hmm.
course, we can, and we
Hmm.
do in many cases, but we're like, no, you write it down because
Yes,
it's going to matter more to you.
absolutely. Well, I won't say Happy New Year, but it's just another day. Another day of consistent action that moves us forward. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your tips and your perspective. And until next time, have a good one.
Thanks, Leah.
Thank you.